Bill Russell, the legend that served as one of the pillars supporting the Boston Celtics during some of their greatest years, has recently passed away at the age of 88. He was responsible for the establishment of a dynasty that thrived for over a decade, both as a player and as a coach. We'll be covering that and more in today's video. First, his life and death. Bill Russell used to be one of the greatest basketball players on the court during the 50s and 60s, and continued on as a great coach for the Boston Celtics from the late 60s well into the 80s. He propped up the Celtics for success for 13 years on the court, leading to 11 championship wins. Unfortunately, his time has come to an end, with his family announcing that the legend passed away peacefully at the end of July at the age of 88. The news came out via his family posting on his Instagram page stating that he died with his wife Janine by his side. The post didn't provide any cause of death, but offered a few solemn words for those that knew him or were inspired by him. They asked friends and fans to recall the great moments that Russell gave the world, now cemented in history, and perhaps also the true story of how those moments unfolded as per his own words. They also thanked the public for keeping Bill in their prayers and asked for everyone to abide by the same commitment that Russell had to strong principles. Russell wasn't just a great basketball player, but was also a political activist, having marched with Martin Luther King Jr. during the Civil Rights Movement. He was staunchly against racism, and his dedication to opposing it has influenced many beyond the basketball community. In fact, Russell had actually been the first black head coach in any major American sport, giving hope to Black America when there might have been very little. Secondly, the world's response. The world has understandably been shaken by this massive loss. Russell wasn't just a legend in the sport of basketball, he was also an inspiration to African Americans that might have never expected to have one of their own play at the level that Russell did. NBA Commissioner Adam Silver said that Russell was the greatest champion in all of team sports. That wasn't just a statement regarding his skill, but also of the values that he embodied. Silver stated that Russell stood for something bigger and that he was responsible for the values of equality, respect, and inclusion that the NBA now has embedded into its core. He also recalled the legend's civil rights advocacy, something that he was no doubt responsible for passing down to younger generations of players. The Boston Celtics released a statement via their social media saying that Russell did the unthinkable, being an emissary for societal change, revolutionizing the sport of basketball, and being one of its greatest champions all at the same time. Michael Jordan, someone whose name is synonymous with basketball now, quickly responded to the news of Russell's death. He described the fellow legend as a pioneer, bringing attention to his legacy as an activist and as a champion of the sport. For Jordan, Russell was one of the primary personalities that made the sport what it is today, paving the way for the next generation of players. He concluded his statement by offering his condolences to Russell's family. Lastly, Russell's legacy. We'd be wrong to talk about Russell's death without paying our respects by talking about his come-up and why he was so inspirational. Russell was born in Louisiana in 1934, and after his family moved to the West Coast, he attended the University of San Francisco. He then led their basketball team to victory at the NCAA championships in 1955 and 1956. The same year, he helped his team win gold at the Melbourne Olympics. That garnered the attention of Celtics coach and manager Red Auerbach, who worked hard to get him drafted to the team. Still though, the public and other team members weren't convinced and figured it was a wasted draft. Russell had an uphill battle to prove he was worth it. His first year at the Celtics, the team won their first championship. The next year was better for Russell, who picked up an MVP award, though the Celtics lost in the finals against the Hawks. However, 1959 saw the Celtics once again take home the championship, beginning a string of 8 consecutive wins that is still unprecedented. Russell never averaged more than 18.9 points during his 13 seasons as a player, but that wasn't his concern. He was a team player first and foremost, and no one can argue that his contribution to the team was negligible. Auerbach retired in 1966, and Russell had the rare opportunity to replace him. That was huge for Russell, but it meant more than that. Taking up Auerbach meant that Russell became the first black head coach in the history of American team sports. Like we mentioned before, this was a huge moment in NBA history. After he retired in 1969, he kept near the court as the coach and general manager of the Seattle Supersonics for about 4 years. In 1970, he was honored with a spot on the NBA's 25th anniversary all-time team, followed by a spot on the 75th anniversary team. In 1996, he was hailed as one of the 50 greatest players in NBA history. Though he was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1975, he didn't accept his ring until 2019 because he didn't think he deserved to be the first African-American elected, instead believing Chuck Cooper deserved the honor. Russell's family said that the arrangements for his memorial service would be announced in the coming days. Now, Now, in other news, first up, Celtics sign NBA veteran. After a strong showing this season, the Boston Celtics have come to an agreement with NBA veteran Bruno Caboclo. Caboclo has previously played with the Sacramento Kings, Houston Rockets, and Memphis Grizzlies. Caboclo has been a free agent forward for some time, but is now signed with the Celtics for a training camp deal where he'll be vying for a roster spot. The deal comes after Caboclo had a strong game with the Utah Jazz during the Las Vegas Summer League last month. He had his greatest season back in 2019 when he averaged 8.3 points with 4.6 rebounds and 1.5 assists as he played with the Grizzlies. He might have only played 34 games, but he started in 19 of those. Over the course of his entire 105 regular season game career, Caboclo has averaged 4.2 points and 2.6 rebounds. Next, NBA to investigate Brunson acquisition. Sources have recently revealed to Yahoo Sports that the NBA have started an investigation into the New York Knicks for allegedly tampering in concern with their acquisition of free agent Jalen Brunson. The league will be looking into whether or not the team had any contact with Brunson prior to his start as a free agent. Brunson's free agency period was slated to begin on the 30th of June, but there were already reports prior to that there was already a deal in place between Brunson and the Knicks. Yahoo Sports had already reported on the situation prior to Brunson's free agency period. It was apparent that Brunson was scheduled to meet with a number of huge teams vying for his signature once the legal period began. However, he chose to only meet with the Knicks, who offered him a deal that was of particular interest to him. What makes this even more suspect is that the Knicks had already made salary cap space for the young point guard when they traded center Nerlens Noel and guard Alec Burks to the Detroit Pistons. That opened up $19 million. It's not clear as to whether this was an intentional preemptive move on their part, but the investigation by the NBA is sure to answer that question. Lastly, stars gather for a special training run. Rice Hines is one of the most respected coaches in the NBA, currently serving as the assistant coach to the Toronto Raptors. In fact, he's so good that many of the greatest names currently playing in the NBA want to train with him. Hines recently began his summer training run at UCLA last week, and it offers everyone an opportunity to learn from him. Some of the biggest names heading over to UCLA to train under him include Thomas Bryant, James Harden, Scotty Barnes, and Pascal Siakam. All of these guys have a lot riding on the upcoming season, so it makes sense that they want to get the most out of their training. For example, Harden needs to beef up his game for the 76ers as he'll be looking for help to take them to the finals this season. Barnes needs to prove that he wasn't just named Rookie of the Year last season by accident. And that's a wrap for this video. What do you think about Bill Russell's legacy? Do you think he's one of the greatest to ever do it? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.